Still rocking after all these years.
This is the story of my rock and roll butler.
This is it, the show that started it all. Often imitated, but never equal. From San Francisco, USA, online since 2004. It's the one and only Rock and Roll Geek Show. With the original Rock and Roll Geek, Michael Butler.
Welcome to the Rock and Roll Geek Show. My name's Michael Butler. Thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate it. Today is Friday, July 5th, 2024, and I am up in the Mountain House. I hope you had a good 4th of July. I spent my 4th of July in Oakdale, California. I had a gig with the AC/DC band, and directly after that gig, we finished about 9 p.m., and I wanted to drive to the Mountain House because I'm only here for a couple of days, and I got to go back to the city and do a paint job, which I got to stay in an Airbnb because I'm not allowed at the house in San Francisco, if you can believe that. Anyway, directly from that gig, I drove a couple of hours to as far as I could drive until I was about to pass out. Stopped at a truck stop in Dunnigan and slept for about 2 hours, and then I woke up. It was so hot. It was like, at that party, it was like 110 degrees. It was a scorcher, man. But when I was trying to sleep in my truck, it was 85 degrees or something like that. And I was just so hot, I couldn't really sleep. So I just decided to drive a little bit farther and drove to a rest area and slept for maybe 30 minutes. And then I just decided, I'm going to try to power as far as I can. And then I drove to a casino, Rolling Hills Casino, and slept for about another 3 hours. So I got about maybe 5 hours combined sleep, so needless to say, boy, are my arms tired. But I'm now up in the Mountain House, and I'm looking forward to being here a couple of days. I just got off the phone with record producer and all-around bon vivant, as I guess you would say, Ric Browde. I've known Ric Browde since I was in American Heartbreak. Billy has known him longer because he worked on some Jet Boy stuff, and I met him back then. Super nice guy. He had a really nice house in the Hollywood Hills. Here's some of the records he's produced. He did Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. He did Joan Jett and the Blackhearts Up Your Alley, which he wrote, I think, 3 or 4 songs on that. He did Faster Pussycat's first album. He did a band called Flies on Fire, which I'm going to play a little bit later because he talked about them during the interview. So I'm going to open up that before we go into the interview. He had a band called Armed Venus. He did Dogs D'Amour, the Straight album, Material Issue, Shooting Gallery, No Shame, Kill for Thrill, Smashed Gladys, Social Intercourse. We talk a little bit about that. Victory. He did Ted Nugent. He worked on Double Live Gonzo. He worked on Scream Dream. He worked on Intensities in 10 Cities, and he did production duties on those. I think he had assistant to the producer record credit on Double Live Gonzo, but he really produced it. He talks about that on the interview. He also was there on most of the other Ted Nugent solo albums. We talk a little bit about Free for All. He worked on Herman Rare. He produced Herman Rarebell's Herman's a German album. He did stuff for Jet Boy. He produced Rhino Bucket album, Jesse Camp and the 8th Street Kids, Skew Siskin, lots of stuff. He worked on Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. He's also written 3 books, and he has a dog rescue as well. The guy has been around, and he's got some great stories, and he doesn't mind telling the stories, and he doesn't seem to worry about pissing anybody off, when somebody doesn't care about offending anybody, that's when you know it's a good interview. Other than me interrupting him all the time, I think you're going to like this. So let's play a song by Flies on Fire, and then we'll go right into the Ric Browde interview. This song is called Baptize Me Over Elvis Presley's Grave.
My head was spinning in a cloud. Some guy country, I suppose. Take me down, I wanna go to Memphis. Oh, if I do, I surely will be saved. Direct me to the road that leads to Memphis. Yeah, baptize me over Elvis Presley's grave. So I arrived at my destination, rode on here and in race. There was a woman in a ticket booth, standing just like Peter at the gate. So I says, ma'am, you know, I've come a long way. Won't you please let me inside? And she said, I don't care if you're the second, come on my ticket and get in line. Take me down, I wanna go to Memphis. Oh, if I do, I surely will be saved. Direct me to the road that leads to Memphis. Yeah, baptize me over Elvis Presley's grave. Lord, baptize me over Elvis Presley's grave.
Hey, Ric Browde, how you doing?
Cool. Doing well.
Thank you for coming on the Rock and Roll Geek Show. It's nice to talk to you. Finally, again. Last time I talked to you was, 20 years ago.
Was it like Cole Studios someplace? Something
It was,
like that?
it was in your living room with all the pinball machines.
Oh, got it. Oh, right. I remember you came up to the house. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was
God,
in
yeah.
American Heartbreak with Billy.
Yeah, with Billy and Lance. Yeah. You know, now I live in Florida.
In
South
Florida?
Yeah, I live like 2 doors down from Bam and Cher, basically.
Nice.
But like, my closest, they're my family. So,
Yeah,
it's kind of,
Cher's great, and so is Bam.
yeah.
You produced that record that did you produce Dogs
Midnight
to More?
Devils.
I know that,
Yeah, I
but
did.
did you produce Bam's record in
I did straight with the Dogs to More, which is my favorite I've ever done.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Huh.
Yeah. Bam and Joe are my family, and to a certain extent Steve. I mean, we're just thick as thieves, and like they're the beneficiaries of my will, type thing. So yeah,
I can imagine what that will looks like too, huh?
it's a pretty silly will, but anyway. But no, Bam and Cher are just the most awesome friends.
They are great people
and musicians, and they did your video, didn't they?
That's right.
I remember seeing a video with Lance, you guys in San Francisco, with this girl who wasn't talented.
Yes, but she was talented in some ways, or in
yeah,
looks.
she was talented in the looks she had down, but
yeah. Yeah, Cher and Bam are great people. I love those two.
They're spectacular, and part of the reason I did the Midnight Devils was so that I could work with Bam and Cher.
How did that come up? How did the Midnight Devils look for you?
It was kind of funny. Did you ever tour Italy at all?
Yes, I did an American Heartbreak a few times.
Okay. Do you remember, did you get a guy named Pacino as your road manager or anything?
We had a booking agent named called Teenage Head, and Manny was the road manager. He ran the booking company.
Well, I produced a band many years ago from Italy, and we became really, really close friends. And then I did another album with this band's second album as well. And, and they were letting me write everything, and it was kind of neat. And, pardon?
What was that band called?
The first band was called Bastet.
Okay.
And then the second band was called Armed Venus.
Ah, okay.
And, and they would let me write all sorts of stuff, like songs like My Life Sucks, But My Girlfriend Doesn't, and things like that. And we got called, I think we were the album of the year on Rolling Stone in Italy. But anyway, he's also a tour promoter over there. So he was promoting the Midnight Devils Pretty Boy Floyd tour. And he listened to the Midnight Devils, and he said, you guys need some help in a couple of places where my friend Ric Browde could help you. Let me call him. And
how long ago was this?
This was about December of last
recently.
year.
This was recently. Okay.
Recently. Yeah, I think it was in December. And I was like, for the last 10 years, I've been running a charity and not doing anything in rock and roll because I was sort of through with it. And, there was something about them. And, they were the nicest people you could ever imagine.
They sure are.
And they just toured with you. And,
that's right.
And Mr. Kane.
That's right.
And
Alex says hi, by the way. We'll talk about. We'll get to Alex soon.
Yeah, we'll do that off the tape. But anyway, so they called me, and we just kind of meshed, and they were like big fans of some of the earlier albums I had done, and so I said, well, look, if I can help you with the songwriting and arranging, I'd love to do it, but we'll do it at Bam and Cher's studio in their house. And they said, sure, let's do it. And so we did the album in, I think, 4 days to do all the tracking, and then 2 days of overdubs they came back and did. So it was real quick. And the album came out. It just blew my mind at how much better it exceeded my expectations, because first of all, I felt like Austin Powers, like coming back from 200 years from not being in the studio, and and all of a sudden it sounds really, really cool. And and the irony is that lead single is a single that I wrote for the band, that Italian band, 25 years ago.
Get Laid? Is that the single?
Yeah.
That video just came out today, I think.
Yeah. And so that's a song I wrote 25 years ago. And they will, I had thought that it might fit them, and I didn't want to push it upon them, but they kind of liked it. And then there's a dance mix, which is going to be coming out a little bit later. That's
nice.
That's really funny. I mean, it's great. It's actually great. I think it's even better.
Those guys work their asses off, man, on stage and not on stage.
And they're the nicest, most gracious human beings you'll ever meet.
Yes,
my wife was like going, can we adopt them?
I don't know if you want to adopt that drummer, man.
Yeah, well, he's a piece. Yeah. But Sam and Chris are just fabulous human beings, and you'd never know that Chris was a sniper in the army, with a lot of kills on his at his belt, and he's just the most serene and caring human being you'll ever meet. And Sam is just a delight to be with at all times. Yeah. And they're what's so great about them is they're willing to try anything. They're not like, this is the way I wrote the song and that's the way it's going to be, and I'm going to stomp out the room. They go, let's try it, let's see if we like it.
Well, and, they show respect to their elders, as they say. And
I'm a lot elder than them, but no, I think they treat everybody like that. I mean, we were at this restaurant by the airport, and this little girl comes up and goes to Sam, "Are you in a rock band?"
How could you ever figure that out?
Yeah, but he was just so sweet with her, and took some time to talk to her and give her an autograph, because she goes, "I've never met a rock and roll music," and it was like one of those things where most bands would have like, "Get away from me, you little brat," and they're just very nice people.
Yes, they are, and they're very hardworking too.
I've never seen a band that works harder, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
When we did that tour with them, we played. It was them and Handsome Dick Manitoba, who's Alex and I are playing with, and some of the shows were not the most well attended shows. Let's just say they were small but enthusiastic crowds. They worked the small crowd like they were playing a stadium. It was great. It was nice to see.
Yeah, I haven't seen them live, but I've seen them in the studio, and
they jump around then too.
A little bit. I mean, because I think it makes them play better, because that's the way they are in real life. So they're just fun to be around. They're infectious.
Yeah. What's Cher and Bam's studio look like? Or what's in it?
It's very, very, Bam is just one of the most talented human beings you'll ever meet. We're using Luna. We've got pretty much every plugin known to man, a pretty decent mic collection, but it's in their house. It's like basically their house has become a recording studio.
What's Luna? Is Luna DLW?
Luna is it's a better version. I think it's a better version of Pro Tools.
Okay, got it.
It makes it sound like it's actually recorded on tape instead of that sort of sterile Pro Tools sound.
And Bam's got his drums set up in the room and all that stuff.
He's got his drums there. Jimmy ended up using Bam's drum set. Bam's got, several different drum kits to choose from. And, we used a lot of, we used Chris's equipment to a certain degree, and then, went to some smaller amps that were plugins.
Yeah.
Because their equipment isn't the best that they had for recording. It's good road equipment, but,
right.
In a studio, it didn't sound quite as good. And we just got, I think we got a pretty damn good sound out of it. And the band worked their asses off.
Well, I heard the new song. It sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, the whole album sounds, I won't even say that's the best mix on the album. I mean, there's some, if you listen to the song called So Hard It Hurts, you really see the depth of what that studio is capable and what the band's capable of. And, and it's a tribute to Bam and Cher, who, had as much, if not more, to do with the album than I did in a lot of ways, but we just make a really good team, the three of us.
Did you guys give them a good price for the recording?
Oh yeah. I walked away from that with less money than I would have made at McDonald's that week.
All right. Well, that's good. You're a charitable guy.
It's just, I did it for the fun of it, to tell you the truth. I just wanted to have some fun, and I was going to take a month off, write a book, finish a book that I was writing, and ended up doing an album and a little bit more.
Did those guys grill you about the what records did they ask you about?
God, they asked about all of them that I'd done. I mean, Sam and Chris are both pretty much historians of rock and roll, so they knew a lot. But mostly, what we talked about was just life. I mean, both of them are just so damn interesting. I feel boring next to them. Sam working in a running a strip club with his fiance, and Chris's exploits in the army, and we talked a lot, mostly about dogs and things like that, and a lot about Ginger and the Wild Hearts.
Oh, really?
And bands that that we've worked with and loved, and the Dogs D'Amour, and a little bit about Faster Pussycat, and tried not to talk about the other records that I've done.
The Poison record. They didn't grill you about the first Poison record.
We talked a little about it, but I didn't want to talk about it. So it's just really boring to me.
Did you work with Ginger from the Wild Hearts?
Yeah, I was the one who signed it. I'm the one who signed him. I had 3 albums in the top 100 at one point, and Faster Pussycat, Joan Jett, and Poison that I had done. And Atco Records was being revitalized, and a guy named Derek Schulman, who used to be a lead singer in Gentle Giant, but was one who signed Bon Jovi and Cinderella and Kingdom Come and all that, got this label. And he asked me to come and be an A&R guy, and I was at that time not ready to be an A&R person because I hated all A&R people that I ever met pretty much at that point. And I said, well, why don't you just give me my own label, because that's what you want, just let me go sign things. So I signed 2 bands, a band called Flies on Fire, who were phenomenal band that I did 2 albums with, and should have been huge, but unfortunately never made it. But went on to bigger things in writing music for television. But I did them, and I signed the Wild Hearts, and we did some demos.
What record? What label was that? Wild Hearts, East West.
It was a shot Atco East West.
Okay, got it.
And then just things didn't work out. I mean, Ginger, I love him to death, but is a difficult human being to work with.
Yeah, I know.
He's a nice bunch of guys.
Right, exactly.
And so anyway, the Wild Hearts went on, and Atco jerked them around for a little bit, and so it didn't work out. And but Ginger and I have remained friends. Actually, he's a much nicer person now than he was back then. But we've become friends, and every time we see each other, we just have a great time together. But yeah, and Bam played drums on the first 2 EPs.
Yeah,
so. We're very aware.
I played a few shows on bass for him when he did some shows in L.A. and I played bass for him.
Oh, did you? Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was. We played the Viper Room. We played with the Toadies at some bigger place. I don't remember the name of it. And,
wow!
And the guy.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, it was
when
fun.
Was it?
This was probably about 10 years ago now. The guy, what's his name? Billy Morrison was the other guitar player.
God, that was when he was going to get the permanent makeup, and he was staying at my house for a few weeks. And,
no, Ginger, no, he just came down. He had this guy Gav managing him at the time, and that's when he just changed his name to Ginger Wildheart. He's no longer David Walls. Right, exactly. So we played the Viper Room. We actually played the Viper Room, I think, a couple of times, and we recorded a song with Mike Klink, produced it.
Oh, because I must have been when Ginger, Mike Klink, and I went to this party way out in the valley somewhere.
Could be.
And Mike Klink, first time I actually got to meet Mike Klink, who's a terrific human being, and not to mention a talented producer. And it was a really probably the most pleasant time I ever had in the same room with Ginger.
Huh. Because, well, when I was hanging out, when I was involved with Ginger, he was in a good headspace. So it was all positivity. There was no, there was.
When
no
he's that guy, he's when he gets in that mood, he's so goddamn creative, and he's such a good songwriter and a great frontman and guitar player. I have nothing but respect for him. I just wish he could get his inner demons exorcised, but then he wouldn't be Ginger. So
that's right.
But he never ceases to amaze me. I'm a big fan of his. And I'm glad that we, maintained our friendship over the whole time. It's like almost 35 years now. God.
When we were talking before this thing started, you were on a plane. Where were you going to?
I was going to Mobile, Alabama, stuck inside of Mobile with the Memphis Blues again, where tomorrow I'm going to fly 65 dogs to just outside of Philadelphia. Then I'm going to drive to Hagerstown, Maryland, and pick up another 60 dogs and fly them to Chicago and Portland, Oregon. Then I'll fly home for 2 days, and then I will be going to Nassau, Bahamas, to fly 80 dogs to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And then I've got to go do some hurricane work, relief for Hurricane Beryl, and deliver supplies to St. Vincent and Dominica, where got really wiped out. This is all after just coming from Africa on Tuesday, where I've been.
Ric Browde, humanitarian. Yeah. What's the dogs? Why do they need? So when you fly to pick up a bunch of dogs and put them on a plane, where are these dogs coming from?
They're coming from, overcrowded shelters, disaster areas, and sometimes from hoarding cases and horrific abuse. And then they're going to shelters where there's empty kennel space and where no local shelter pets are being displaced by our flights.
Do they call you up and they call they say, well, we got all these dogs. Who do we call? We don't want to put them to sleep, so we call somebody, and they find.
They call. I mean, I get calls every day from. I mean, things have never been so, in the last 20 years have not been as bad as they are now.
So you have a charitable company or something like that?
I have an organization called Wings of Rescue. We've flown over 73,000 pets to safety and delivered over 800,000 pounds of humanitarian aid to disaster victims throughout North America. You know, we responded to every disaster, you know, in North America: hurricanes, volcanoes, or earthquakes, floods, you name it. Pretty much every disaster that's befallen in the U.S., we've been there.
What made you want to do that, or how did you get started in that?
About 20 years ago, gosh, probably right about when I knew you. I woke up one day, you know, I made a lot of money, and my wife's been a successful lawyer and was a business executive, you know, at various record companies. And we woke up one day and realized that, you know, we'd done nothing to make the world any better. You know, the world never needed another rock and roll album. You know, nobody was going to live or die because of that. And we just felt that we needed to do something and to make the world better. So we started volunteering in a very high-kill animal shelter in Baldwin Park, California. And then I realized that shelter pets were being marketed really poorly, you know, because they were like, everybody was like going, if you don't adopt this dog, we're going to kill it. And it dies by midnight tonight. And I was like going, God, you wouldn't sell a used car that way.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say, well, I've got this broken down car, muffler's going to fall off, blah, 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 blah. You want to make it so market it as such as the world would be better if you had this, your world would be better if you had this dog. So I went to the shelter that was killing 100 dogs every day. And we were the first shelter to use social media. We were the first shelter to use videos. And I brought in photographers from Vogue. And all of a sudden we were adopting out all the dogs. And like the last few weeks that I was there, they only killed 6 dogs. And all of them were for medical reasons. But I realized that I could do these things, and it just became, people kept asking me to do things. And so I just was volunteering for, 18 years doing stuff. And then I got asked to do this flight thing and by this crazy guy. And, and ultimately he left, and I ended up in 2017, right before Hurricane Maria, Harvey, and Irma, running this organization and taking it from being mostly based in California with flights up to Oregon and Washington and Idaho and Utah to we've touched down in all 50 states and 18 countries and, saved a lot of lives. So,
do you own the plane?
We had one and we sold it because we realized that the old joke about boats applies to airplanes. Right. The second happiest day is
best 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah. And the happiest day is when you sell it. Airplanes are expensive to maintain, and they're also really hard to doing what we do to insure. So it was better that we chartered planes. So we sort of have an arm's length distance from the ownership, but we have vested interests in several planes, let's say.
Is it like a 501c company, something like that?
Yeah, we're a 501c3 charity.
Okay, yeah.
Huh. And we operate on the Blanche Dubois theory, on the kindness of strangers, to keep going. So we're about a $4 million a year budget.
Oh, nice.
And, I'll fly, on a normal year, I would fly about 225 days a year. So, it was really funny. We were counting up the number of airports I've been in the last 8 years, and it was like something like 370.
Are these airports. Like single engine planes or a private jet?
Some are single engine, some are PC-12s. I mean, we took a C-130 from Hawaii once. We did. We primarily use it either a PC-12, which is a single-engine turboprop that can pressurized plane that can fly up to 29,000 feet ceiling, and then we use a lot of Embraer 120s, a plane called the Brasilia, and we use those quite a lot. They're a plane that would have been used on commuter airlines. It's a propeller plane, but 2-engine prop that would hold 37 passengers. It's used in still some airlines around the world.
Right. I think I flew in a couple of those when I went to Asia.
Yeah, there are a lot of the airlines. I spend a lot of time in Asia. So,
what did you do in Africa? Were you just on vacation?
Yeah, I was I went on a safari. I'd done it last year at the most luxurious place I've ever been in my life or imagined in my life. It was just
what
amazing.
town was it?
It was in Kruger National Park. It's not really a town, but you fly into Lumumba, is the airport, but it's, Lumumba is a population of maybe 9 people. I don't know. But it's like way out in the wilderness and along the Mozambique border, and a place called Singida, which, is ridiculously expensive and worth every penny of it.
I'm going, and we're going to England with Handsome Dick Manitoba. When I come back, my wife and I are going to Africa. I have no idea where I'm going, but I think I'm going the same place you went. If you go into
Singida, it's Shangri-La. I mean, you are treated like royalty. I don't think the King of England gets treated as well as you do there. And the food's amazing. The accommodations are like Architectural Digest, eat your heart out. And
what kind of food did you eat?
They run a cooking school for natives, and they train them to be cordon bleu chefs. And so it was just amazing. I don't eat meat, but they would make me all these amazing dishes. And, there were friends of mine who were with us were, meat carnivores, and, it was just anything you could imagine. And you could always they give you a menu tailored to your tastes, but each night, or each meal, but then you could order off the menu, and if somehow, you're like 2 hours from the nearest town, they'd have whatever you wanted and make it better than any, restaurant you ever go to. It's just amazing.
How long were you in Africa?
We were there for 2 weeks this time. I'd been there like 1 week last year. I used to have an office in Cape Town, South Africa, so I knew a little bit about, I've known a little bit about it.
I know we're going to Cape Town. The woman who cleans our house is letting us stay at her apartment in Cape Town. And then we're flying down somewhere down where the jungles, where the safaris are.
Yeah, that'll be a little bit north, more towards Johannesburg, probably. If it's the best.
I don't think we're going to where like the touristy. I think we're going to more resort type place. My wife knows all about this safari, about the Africa.
Yeah, I mean, we also then went up to Botswana and Namibia, and
that might be where we're going to.
Down the Klo River, and I mean, it wasn't as impressive, but it was cool, and.
Is there a migration happening around this time of year?
Well, the animals in the parks, the parks are fenced in. They're like something like 3 million acres. I can't remember what the exact total. So they can go, roam from Mozambique to Botswana, South Africa, Zambia. They keep running. I mean, certain birds are migrating, but the elephants and giraffes and leopards and cheetahs and zebras, they're all there. Hyenas, they're all there. Wild dogs, you're seeing all of them. Like literally they're right up on you.
Yeah, I think we're going for like 3 weeks, maybe a month.
That's going to be great. You're going to love it.
I hope so. It's not my dream, but it's my wife's dream. So I'm sure I will love it once I'm there. I like to eat good food. So,
well, the food in we discover is the food in South Africa is generally phenomenal. throughout the country. It's almost like Thailand. It's pretty hard to get a bad meal.
Right.
But you also discovered that a 5-star hotel in the United States would be like a 2-star hotel over there. I mean, when the service in South African hotels, luxury hotels, is just phenomenal.
Oh, good.
Always.
Good. I can't wait then.
Yeah.
So you do dog rescue. Do you own dogs yourself? I think you had dogs
I have
when
5.
Oh.
Yeah. I've always had dogs, so I have 5 of them.
What kind of dogs are they?
They're all rescues.
Okay.
One's a pot cake from the Bahamas who survived 4 hurricanes. He was a street dog, and he's just this cool-ass dog. Then I got another dog from Louisiana that kind of looks like a Disney dog, but it's like 30-pound dog. And then I've got 3 little dogs that that were near death in Baldwin Park that we have now. I've had as many as 10 at a time.
Yeah, we have 4 Salukis. You know what a Saluki is?
Oh yeah, I know Salukis.
Yeah, they're
Fast.
nice dogs. Yes, my wife takes them out coursing and stuff.
Yeah, they need that.
Yeah, I'm up here in the mountains in California, and we live on Bureau of Land Management, and there's just hundreds of acres for them to run around. They love it.
They must. Yeah.
All right, so back to rock and roll. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk.
So some of my favorite albums you worked on, Double Live Gonzo. You were assistant producer. What was?
Well, on the single, I'm listed as producer. Yank Me. You ever look at the flip side?
Yank Me, Crank Me. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's a funny story about that album. It's kind of a weird album.
So what?
I
Tell me the
actually
story.
met my wife during that album.
What?
Well, I met my wife during that album.
Ah, really? She worked for Epic?
No, she was a Columbia law student.
Columbia.
She was the first girl that I ever met that actually, that could spell her name and owned a Ted Nugent album. It was a rare treat. But I remember her coming, and we recorded it. Very little of that album is live.
Oh, really?
Basically, very, very little. The drums are live.
Because Ted Nugent said that there was almost nothing. I had Ted Nugent on my show a few times. He said there's almost nothing overdubbed on that album.
Yeah, well, Ted never paid attention. Ted never paid attention to what he was doing.
Yeah,
his solos are live. His solos are live.
His solos are live. Okay, well, the solos are pretty badass.
He as long as it's in the key of he's okay. But he's what happened was I had gotten a job when I was in university at Cornell. Got an Ivy League education somehow, and the guy who at the time was managing Nugent. A guy produced Lou Futterman.
Right, yeah. That's who has producer credits on that album.
Yeah, and he didn't do much. He was like a New York. He was a figurehead. I mean, he owned the contract, and he then gave the management contract to Lieber Krebs for 30 opening slots for Aerosmith. The Aerosmith tour, and that's what broke Ted. But Lou would act like he was producing on the phone the whole time. And I was his assistant. I started out as babysitter and grew into doing this production stuff. And, Cliff Davis, the drummer, who was the real talent at Ted Nugent, really did. I mean, Tom Worman gets some credit, and Tom actually took a $5,000 bribe to sign Ted Nugent, but from what I recall.
Yeah, I had Tom Worman on my podcast, and he talked about that.
What a nice man.
I had always heard that Cliff Davies was the guy who really produced the records.
Cliff was the genius behind Ted, and as soon as Cliff left, Ted fell apart.
Yeah, Cliff stayed with him for a long time.
Cliff and I left in 1981. December 7th, 1981. We finished Intensities, and it was fuck this shit.
Well, he came back because
No, he never came back.
well, I saw when Aerosmith did their reunion when Joe Perry got back in the band, back in the Saddle tour, and Ted Nugent opened up, and I think Cliff was on drums.
No, couldn't have.
Huh? Maybe it was.
I don't think so.
I could be wrong.
Cliff basically became a recluse. I mean, he and I formed a production company. We did a couple of albums together, and then split up in '83. But remained friends. And then unfortunately, he just got depressed and he committed suicide.
Well, the first I was in this band called the Butlers. We were a cover band. The first gigs we ever did, we opened up for Mark Farner, and Cliff Davies was playing drums for Mark Farner. It was.
Did he? I didn't know. I don't remember that. Cliff came from a band called If.
Yeah, this was back. This was maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when Cliff.
He killed himself. Well, I was going to tell you.
I remember getting the phone call, but I just don't remember what year it was. But Cliff was such a great guy.
When we found out that it was Cliff Davies on drums for Mark Farner, we showered. Billy Rudd was in the Butlers with me, and we showered Cliff Davies with praise on his drumming for the Nuge.
Cliff and Mark were both friends because we used to record up in Ann Arbor at a studio called A Square. And Farner went in there as well. And Farner was like, what an amazing voice that guy had. But he was like really into, he was kind of a religious fanatic at that point. Yeah. But Cliff, I remember him playing with Farner a couple of times. And he was going to produce something with. I think he actually did something after Cliff and I split up. I think he may have produced something for Farner. He also produced this Canadian band called what were they called from Vancouver? They were an A&M. I can't recall what they're called.
I don't
blanking
know.
on.
Well, my point is, we were just geeking out with Cliff Davies on just we love those Nugent albums, this and that, and to the point of him being really uncomfortable. These guys fanboying out on Billy and me, total fan.
Well, he was always uncomfortable around people. He Cliff didn't live for adulation. Cliff was a very serious. He came from a really bad background. I mean, horrendous, almost Dickensian background. And he then educated, after Ted Nugent, he went to university. He got his degree and was really well read, but he was living up in a cabin in Irons, Michigan, and was a bit paranoid and crazy, about things. And he's the guy who would have given you your shirt off his back to anybody. He's just an incredibly nice guy, but just did not want to be a star.
Yeah,
and he should have been.
Was super nice to us. About 2 weeks after that show, he was dead.
Yeah, and just the way he did it was
I know.
It like everything about Cliff, he did it neatly. He put a tarp down, laid down, and shot him there so there'd be no blood, to clean up.
Yeah, I think he was didn't have health insurance or something like that, and
no, that wasn't it. He married this girl who was crippled. That was his third wife, and it was her insurance that was a problem, and so he made sure that she had enough money to live on, and then he shot himself. But he didn't want to leave a mess. He didn't want to. Cliff never would want to inconvenience anybody. It was, he was incredibly headstrong, but incredibly generous. One of the most generous human beings you've ever met.
Well, he was a great drummer. I know that.
Oh man, and he, all that Ted Nugent stuff was garbage until Cliff came in. Cliff. What happened was when Nugent got signed to Epic, Lou Futterman, who had produced If and managed If, there was a drummer named Steve Missel, who was the Kiss. He was if you had Steve Missel and you fired him, you were going to be a hit. I mean, he was the first drummer in Nugent. Foreigner, Billy Idol, and Benny Mardones.
Oh, so he played,
they all fired him.
He played the Amboy Dukes then, probably.
He was after Amboy Dukes. There was they were on Discreet, and then they got dropped by Discreet. They did after Call of the Wild, I think was the album, and then Steve was hired, and they really didn't have any direction. They were going to the studio, and everything sounded horrible. And so Lou, in one of his more astute moves, brought in Cliff, and he said, "Hey, Cliff, can you play? Help them out. Maybe do some arranging." And so Cliff did some arranging and stormtrooping and stranglehold, and it came in. And then what happened was Nugent realized that Cliff was the bomb, and he said, "Well, come on tour." And Cliff was like, "Going, well, what are you going to pay me?" And Derek and Rob weren't on points either; they were all on salary at that point. And Cliff said, "Well, I'm not doing it without a point on the record, and and whatever the salary was against it." And Nugent said, "Well, I'm not going to give anybody." Nugent's a very cheap guy.
That's what I heard.
You remember when he took the DC Hawks out, and after we all left and made them drive around in a station wagon and pay them $200 a week. They had to drive their own equipment. But Nugent did a couple of shows, and they bombed. They were just horrible shows. And so he called Cliff up, and Cliff said, "Well, you ready to pay me?" And he goes, "Well, come out and look at it, and just play one show." And so Cliff agreed to do one show. He did his usual amazing job, and then he walked off, and Nugent's going, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "I haven't seen any offer yet." And held Nugent over the barrel and said, "Hey, you got to give me a point." And in typical Cliff fashion, he goes, "And you got to give Derek and you got to give Rob a point."
So Derek and Rob got points too?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's good. Were you around you weren't around during the free-for-all time when Meatloaf came in?
Yeah, I was. I was definitely
Were you there at the fist fight?
I wasn't giving credit.
Were you there when Derek and Ted got into a fist fight?
Which time?
Well, during the making of Free for All, Rob.
There were a lot. That wasn't the only one. There were during Cat Scratch.
Really? Nice.
Yeah, that was a normal hair pulling thing.
So
yeah.
Were you there when they brought in Meatloaf? How was that? Meatloaf was those songs he sang on that Free for All album are fucking great, man. Meatloaf fit in perfectly.
Oh, he was great. The only problem is Ted didn't like him because he sweat. Meatloaf smelled so bad.
Oh, really?
Big guy, and Ted just couldn't be. Ted was like, "Oh, I can't go out with a fat guy who sweats that."
Great. I heard Derek. Go ahead.
Derek was kind of a nightmare to be. He was fun to be around, but he was a nightmare as well because he was a kleptomaniac.
Oh,
he kept stealing things. He kept stealing things, and but the last straw was they were in. I think it was Atlanta, and he went into Piggly Wiggly and he shoplifted 2 cans of sardines or something like that, and got caught. And Nugent was outside waiting in the car, and Nugent just took off and said, "Fuck this! I'm just tired of this shit." And then Derek was always there, and then he did the St. Paradise thing and took Rob with him.
Right. Yeah.
And then Charlie Hune and Dave Kiswinny came in.
Right, and, for Scream Dream. That you produced Scream Dream.
Yeah, and I was involved in State of Shock, Scream Dream. I was actually
worked on State of Shock too. I like that album, State of Shock.
Yeah. It was State of Shock was kind of weird because that was when Ted was getting divorced.
That's right. Yeah, his wife died around that time too, I think.
No, that was later.
Okay.
State of Shock is all about his wife.
That's right. It's the divorce album.
Well, it wasn't yet divorced, but Ted had this thing where he'd go out on tour for a month, then dump his laundry, and then go hunting for a month, and leave it with his wife Sandy. Yeah. Well, he came home from one of those hunting trips, and his daughter Sasha meets him at the door, and she goes, "Where's your mom?" And he goes, "Oh, she's upstairs with Uncle Floyd, and I think she has a stomachache because she's making all sorts of weird noises."
Wow, that's great.
And he caught his guitar roadie in bed with her. So
never heard that story. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah. And so so when State of Shock came out, he was like, there was a brief moment where he tried to get her back, and he was like smoking hash and drinking.
What, Ted was?
Ted was smoking hash because Sandy was a pothead, and he thought that might get her back.
And what was he drinking?
Bailey's.
Huh.
Bailey's Irish cream, and it was just and Ted was just a mess.
I can imagine.
Then their divorce got really, really nasty, and it was like when it was going to be like you're probably too young to remember this. The Roxanne Pulitzer divorce, in Florida. So he moved to Florida so he could get a gun license or something like that, and they tried to do this divorce, and it was like they were both like, from what I was being told by the management, it was like both of them were making all these accusations that were just so bullshit. Huh. That the judge had said, "Look, I'm going to take your kids away from you if one of you doesn't, start just being a human being." And so what happened was they were just finishing the divorce off, and Sandy was out driving, and she went through a stop sign all the way to heaven.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Ted got left with the two kids, and I think he then picked up this groupie who crawled up on stage, and
that was
Pele.
the Indian, Pele. Was that her name, Pele?
Pele, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was with her, and then I lost track of Ted because I never cared about him as a human being or politically, and so it was Ted and I had he never trusted me because I was talking about the Sex Pistols and the Clash being amazing bands.
But he had you work on Scream Dream was after State of Shock, so he had he hired you back for Scream Dream.
I was Lou Futterman's surrogate, basically. So when you saw Lou Futterman's name, you saw me a lot. He really was doing it. And Lou Futterman he could sell sand to the Arabs, and he convinced me that I would get my apprenticeship, and then I would get my name on records. So they, like on Double Live Gonzo, they put my name on the single because he said the record companies pay attention to the singles.
Right. Right. They threw you a bone.
And so then Cliff and I both had enough, and we just like the intensity's abortion.
That was the last album for Epic, wasn't it?
It was a contractual obligation album, yeah.
Yeah, all original live album, all new songs, and none of them very
all new
good.
Songs none of them very good. They were all learned at sound check. They were played each 3 times, and that was
Flying Lip Lock, I think was one of them, right?
I Am a Predator. I can't even. I just remember I am a predator. That thing for sure. Yeah. I remember while we were mixing it in Ann Arbor, John Lennon got shot, and all the media coming out to talk to Ted about it. Ted made a fool of himself, and it was a piece of shit album. It should never have been done.
Well, it went gold, right?
Every one of his albums went gold.
Until
probably came back gold. Then he did the Atlantic album, which was a disaster.
What was that? Little Miss Dangerous, maybe? I don't know. That was that. No, that was that Nugent. The album just called Nugent, wasn't it? I don't remember.
Well, no, his first album on Epic was called Nugent. Maybe it was. Maybe it was called Nugent. His first album on Epic was Ted Nugent. I honestly never paid any attention to Ted once. I ran into him when I was recording Joan Jett. This is the last time I ever saw him. And
well, tell me about the Joan Jett album, because I love that album too.
Up Your Alley. Up Your Alley, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
How did they hire you? Because Kenny, I'm assuming Kenny Laguna found you, or.
Well, I was managed by Lieber Krebs.
Okay.
And they were Lieber Krebs, and I had Poison and Faster Pussycat on the charts, and I didn't know it at the time, but Joan did I Love Rock and Roll, and that sold, I think, 5 million, that album, whatever it was on. Then the next, she went to MCA and did, what was that album? The yellow cover was called
that was
Jump
just called Album. That was just called Album.
Yeah, just Album. And album didn't do well. Then she went to Epic, to Blackheart, Epic, CBS Associated, I should say. And her albums, the album before Up Your Alley only sold 28,000 copies because I remember that figure.
That was Good Music, I think that album was called.
It's been so long,
That had a couple of Gary Glitter songs, or one Gary Glitter. I love you, I love you, love me too. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyway, they knew I had done some stuff and had some success, and so Kenny and Steve Lieber came to me and said, "Hey, would you write with Joan and do some songwriting with Joan?" I was a big Joan Jett fan.
Oh, you were?
I loved her.
Yeah. Definition of rock and roll to me back then.
She to me was the quintessential rock and roll. And when I got to know her, I mean, she's a bit of a space cadet. I mean, she smokes way too much pot at that time.
Right. Still does, I think.
Probably. There would be a FedEx envelope that would arrive every day with an ounce of pot, and they would all do it. And she had this weird relationship with Kenny Laguna and Kenny Laguna's wife.
Yes, I heard that too.
And she was trying to, she didn't want anybody to know she was a lesbian, and I couldn't care who she went to bed with. I just thought she was.
Me neither.
And I discovered she was probably the best rhythm guitar player I've ever worked with.
Yeah, underrated rhythm guitar player for sure.
Oh man. Plays everything perfect first take and can then double it and doesn't want to hear what she did when she did. She just goes, "I'll double it. Don't play me back what I did." And it's unbelievable what she does.
Had you known her before then?
I think we'd met a couple of times around Lieber Krebs' office, but I wouldn't say I knew her. So I would go out to their house in Long Island, and I think it was Roslyn, Long Island, or someplace like that. I can't remember where it was. And what was so weird was Joan didn't really know where she lived because they were scared that she was getting kidnapped. Kenny's this paranoid, crazy guy, talented as fuck and crooked as fuck.
Yeah, he was involved he was in the Roulette Records days when the record.
Right. Well, he did Crimson and Clover. He was I think he was with Tommy Rowe and the Shandels, and then I think he was with all those bubble. I think he was in with the Ohio Express. Yeah. And all those types of things.
Did you produce that whole album?
Desmond. So what happened was, and I didn't know this until later, because was Epic was going, "We're going to drop you unless you go get some outside production help." Kenny, you're not doing it anymore. And I was going, wow, Kenny's a guy, because remember he did that Bow Wow Wow, I Want Candy thing, which was amazing, and it was 4 songs in an EP, and they all great. I was going, wow, Kenny Laguna's a really good producer. But I was like, well, I'll get an opportunity to work with somebody I really respect, and so they had me come up, and I ended up writing 3 songs with them that made the album. And Desmond Child did 2 songs, Little Liar and I Hate Myself for Loving You.
Yeah, the 2 hits.
The 2 hits. And so anyway, they started recording at the Hit Factory, and I thought, I just wrote 3 songs with Joan Jett, and I'm doing this horrible album with this group called Smash Gladys.
I want to talk to you about that album too, because I love that album.
God, they're doctors for that, Mike.
What?
They're doctors can treat you for that. Please.
Oh man, that album's good. Let's stay on Joan Jett for a second. So you wrote, what songs did you write?
I wrote Riding with James Dean.
Right.
I wrote Back It Up. What's the other one? Just Like them in the Movies. And so anyway, I get this call, and they go, everything's just not sounding right. Can you just come over and lend a hand and use your ears? So I came in, and they really liked what I was doing. And so they said, well, can you come back tomorrow? Come back. And I was like, okay, chance to work with Joan Jett in the studio. How much do I have to pay? Little did I know it did. But anyway, so, they kept calling me, and, they said, why don't you stay and finish the album with us? And so, I would end up working on some of the overdubs for Little Liar and Hate Myself for Loving You. And I was enjoying every minute. Joan and Kenny would get in these terrific fights sometimes.
So
I mean, just
oh yeah, they still do. I don't know if those fights are. Sometimes I think those fights aren't real. I think they're just like as a
I can tell you
show.
funny. I can tell you one of the funniest stories ever about one of their fights. They were recording in the record plant. This wasn't. We were recording in the Hit Factory, but the album before, because one of my really good friends who had worked with them was telling me this story. I think it was Ric Browde who told me this. So it was really hot, and the record plant had no air conditioning. It was humid, and it was horrible in New York, and they were recording late at night. So they all stripped down to their underwear, and record plant was on 46th Street and between 8th and 9th Avenue. I think it was 46th, maybe it was 44th, but it was like right in the middle of the Tenderloin, Times Square,
right,
when it was at its seediest.
Yeah.
So they're down in their underwear. And Ricky played something that Kenny didn't like. And so Kenny threw a guitar at him and instead hit Joan. So Joan starts beating on Kenny, and this fight just rolls out, and the two of them are going at it, and they roll out into the street where they get swept up by the New York police force for a prostitution ring. So they both get booked, and suspicion of prostitution is pretty funny. Yeah, no, their fights were real, and
I never knew they had fist fights. I know they had a lot of arguments.
Yeah, they had a lot. Joan was kind of, I always felt like so dumb, it was so weird. Joan came up to my apartment in New York one day. We were doing some writing with Bob Halligan. I don't even remember if that song made the album, but Joan comes up, and I lived at 113th and Riverside, right next to the apartment. There was, if you watched Amazing Miss Maisel, it was like right next to me. And Uma Thurman was my upstairs neighbor, and growing up, I never knew she was like going to go on to who she was. But so Joan comes up, and she goes, "I'm hungry," and I go, "Well, let's go up around the corner to Broadway and grab a slice of pizza." And Joan goes, "Can I do that? You can walk, can't you?" And she goes, "Yeah." Like,
was she afraid? Was she afraid she was going to get recognized or something?
Well, Kenny had convinced her that if she ever got out of public, she would be kidnapped and
he had to be with her at all times.
Right. So I said, so she's like going, "Well, what happens if somebody sees me?" And I said, "Well, then you'll see them." And, and so we're eating this pizza in this pizza parlor. Nobody recognized her. It was at Columbia University. And she was having the time of her life because she was just like, "I can sit here like a normal person. I really can do this." And I realized how sheltered and how deprived she was, and felt very bad for her. And she was like, "Oh, this is just amazing." And then Kenny was screaming at me when he found out.
Oh, I was gonna ask you that.
Screaming, "What are you doing? Taking her out into the middle of Harlem?" And
I wonder why he would not let her go out without him.
Well,
is he afraid she was going to maybe dump him?
There was some weird overtones, and I mean, I don't want to get into sexuality too
There's
much.
always rumors about him and his wife and Joan, but I don't know. I don't know, and I don't care really.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of it's true, but I know Kenny slept on the floor, and Meryl and Joan slept in bed a lot of times.
Oh, good for her.
But anyway, one thing led to another. I ended up doing the album. Joan was awesome to work with. I mean, she didn't want to do this Diane Warren song, which was really funny. It was Poison by that Alice Cooper later did.
What song was that?
Wasn't Poison. It was on that Poison album. It was called House of Fire, or something like that.
I don't know that Alice Cooper album.
But it was like, and so Diane Warren runs into the literally into the recording room when Joan's out there and starts screaming at her, and Joan didn't want to do the song, and she was right. I thought it just didn't match Joan.
I think there's a Diane Warren song on that album, though.
There was one Diane Warren song on it, and Diane's like screaming, and then I had to be the one that spoke up for Joan, and it was kind of weird. And I didn't know who Diane Warren was because I never paid attention to any. I was the least Hollywood person you've ever met. Just like I didn't care. I didn't follow rock and roll like everybody else. I was just like my friends were mostly outside of rock and roll. Anyway, going back to Joan, we did the album. It was a really good record. I mean, we had Tommy Price and Chasm Sultan as a rhythm section.
Yeah, Tommy Price, fantastic drummer. He's got cancer right now. He just got hit by a car too, I think.
Oh, poor guy.
I met his wife when we played Texas. We just toured Texas, and his wife came to the show because she's friends with Handsome Dick Manitoba, and he's still hanging.
Yeah, I think they all. Oh, that's too bad. What a nice guy.
Great,
and what a
fantastic
amazing
fucking drummer.
Oh man, like you'd have to change the heads after every take. He's probably the hardest hitter I've ever.
That guy was a badass.
He's incredible. And Chasm Sultan was an amazing bass player. Yeah. And Tommy and Chasm grew up together on Staten Island, I think.
Huh. Yeah, Chasm played with
Utopia.
Todd Rundgren. Yeah.
And Mick Taylor came in and played, solo, and it was really neat. And Keith Richards would come in after us, and doing his album, and it was a lot of fun. And then finished the album, and there were contracts going that I was going to get points, and they never signed it. And then because I did an all-girl band, Kenny refused to pay me. I could only get my writing royalties.
Because you did an all-girl band?
Yeah, Kenny wrote this letter. I still have it. It's pretty funny. That I had traitorously done an all-girl band. And I was like, what?
I wonder what that's supposed to mean.
It was typical Kenny. He didn't want to pay me. Oh. And, he just does, he's incredibly litigious. He's ripped off everybody. He didn't pay Desmond either. Because I remember about 15 years ago, I ran into Desmond, and Desmond goes, "Did you ever get paid?" And I was like, "No." And
Desmond got publishing on that.
Got publishing, and I got my publishing, but
that album did well, didn't it?
Sold, I think, a couple of million copies. Yeah,
that's good. So as a guy who wrote 3 songs and produced the record, what is publishing? If it sells a couple million records, what does publishing equal out to in dollars?
You have to. Well, I'd have to break it down, but a few $100,000. But we had to sign Joan as a writer to everything, even though all Joan would do in terms of writing was she would change the gender to be not gender non-specific.
Oh, really? Say her instead of him instead of her. Huh? How about that?
No, she would change it to sort of a neuter, so it could be either way.
Yeah, she's got writing credit on every song except for those 2 covers.
Yeah, that was part of the deal. So we had to split. We had to split her in on the publishing.
Whose idea was it to bring the covers in? Was it her and Kenny's idea for all the songs?
Yeah.
Johnny covers in, yeah.
We did. I remember we did Tulane by Chuck Berry, and I can't. Was there another cover on that album? I can't remember.
Tulane's on that, and I think that Iggy song, Stooges song.
Oh, I Want to Be Your Dog. That was my idea, I think.
Yeah, that was. Sometimes she still plays that live.
And was the biggest compliment I've ever gotten in my life was I was at the Cat Club, and Steve Jones came up to me and with Iggy, and Iggy comes up to me and goes, "I want to thank you for doing that. I really loved it. It was so good. I can't thank you enough." And I was like, Iggy Pop is thanking me.
Yeah, that's one of my idols. It's a great version.
Joan nailed it. Yeah. I mean, with Tommy and Chasm, and Ricky, great band. Joan is part of that band. Joan is probably she deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, just as a guitar player, not just as a personality.
Well, besides being a pioneer, she's just rock and roll to
the max. Yeah. Yeah, she was really talented. I'm really disappointed that they ripped us off, but I do respect her.
So, Rick, we're an hour into this. You got a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
When we mentioned Smash Gladys briefly, was that a record label hire, or did you know the guys in Smash or people in Smash Gladys?
No. Well, I think I knew Roger. I may have known Roger already, but No, I think I met him during there. He was the only one in the band that I really liked. Well, I liked JD, the bass player too. But
What about the girl singer? I don't know that much about Smash Glass except I like that album a lot.
she's a cunt.
Oh, really? She's dead now, you know.
Yeah.
She was a cunt. Where are they from?
Yeah.
Philly?
No, they're from Toronto. The two of them, Bart and her. Bart's real name was
I thought they were a
Schultz.
cool band.
No, they weren't. They sucked.
Oh,
But
really? Okay.
What happened was, I had hired this manager. My wife demanded that I hire a manager because she was tired of me, you know, doing things. And I had always signed my own bands, you know, and like produced them usually, you know, went out and found them and did sort of known AOR and did that. And so this guy named Sandy Robertson, who managed a lot of really heavy bands, producers rather, wanted to manage me, and Derek Schulman and all these A&R guys, and were like saying, you should use him. And so he kept bringing me these albums, you know, to do with bands that, like, I remember Transvision Vamp was one of them. And it's like, what was I going to add to Transvision Vamp? They're not my type of music, you know. And, you know, even though the really weird thing was I was always miscast in what I was doing because of all I ever listened to was R&B. You know, I grew up on stacks and gospel music, black gospel music, like the, you know, Marion Williams and the gospel airs of Dayton, Ohio, and Clara Ward and Dorothy Lefkowitz. That's what I listened to. And I would be signing bands like Flies on Fire and Wild Hearts and things like that. And so Sandy was like, "Oh, you've got to do a major label." I'm tired. I kept turning down everything he brought me. It's like, I don't want to do this because he'd either bring me these established groups and like, how am I going to work with these bands who've done a million things, you know, on their own? They don't need a producer. They just need an engineer to turn on the record. You know, what are you going to, you know, what are you going to tell, you know, these people to do? And I think that came from having one unpleasant. I started an album with Michael Schenker that just went wrong from the moment I started.
What album was that?
It never came out.
Huh.
Rightfully, Michael Schenker had Michael Schenker was in England, and he put together a band with Ted McKenna, who
the guy from the Alex Harvey band.
Alex Harvey, and Dennis from Balance, Dennis Feldman from Balance, and Ray Kennedy, who was a songwriter, cocaine dealer, who had written some songs for the Beach Boys, who was batshit crazy in England. And so we're recording, and it was just really bad for me in England. And at one point, when I realized it was really wrong was Michael goes, calls up David Krebs in New York, our manager, and goes, if you don't get me 2 grams of cocaine, I'm going to burn my house down.
Why would he care if he burns his house down? It's not his house.
Well, that's what kind of, you know, I thought, you know, I speak German, so I, you know, spoke to German, and I was like going, Michael, and in German, I was like, don't you think it'd be more effective if you burned David's house down?
Exactly.
I think that would be more of a threat. And Michael goes, it would not respect me if I burned it.
Huh.
So anyway, I go to bed that night, and I get this phone call from the Oxford Fire Brigade going, do you know a man named Michael Schenker?
Oh, he actually burned his house down?
Yes, he did, with his baby and his wife.
Great.
Yeah.
I told you I was going to burn it down, motherfucker.
It was just like, whoa.
Do you dare question Michael Schenker if he's lying?
Integrity.
Well,
I mean,
or he could have said, well, I promise. I guess I got to stick to my guns now.
You know, I mean, you know,
That's great.
and there was another incident there shortly thereafter that was equally silly.
That is great.
But I was just like, I'm out of here. And then they persuaded me to come back. And then I came back, and Michael can't play rhythm guitar to save his life. And so we brought in George Lynch to play guitar. And it was just like
on a Michael Schenker album. That's great.
But, you know, there are only 3 songs.
This was when Michael was drinking and stuff too. I think he's sober now.
Drinking, coking, and God only knows what else.
Yeah,
But
right.
and Michael's a really nice. I have to say, he's a really nice guy. Once I left, I felt like I liked him
It's
again.
crazy. Some of those talented people like Ginger, and they got it's hard to keep the screws tightened.
Yeah, and there were a few screws loose. So back to Smash Gladys. So anyway, I was like, I don't want to do an album by an established band. So he goes, well, Elektra wants you to do this album because you had a lot of success with Faster Pussycat. Will you do this album with this group called Smash Glass? And I go, I've got to do something for him because this guy's getting pissed off that I haven't done anything. So I did this album. And it was going okay, but Sally was was just a difficult human being. She like had to she was such a star that she had to record with the lights off and nobody could see her. She decided, and it was like stupid shit. And she was the one guitar player who wasn't that good. She lived with, I don't know if they ever were married, but his name was Bart Lewis, but his real name was Harry something.
Harry
Lewis.
Schwartz.
Harry Schwartz, that was his name.
Really? That was the time
yeah.
when record labels were signing everybody who had a rock and roll haircut and black pants.
Yeah, pretty much. And they were looking for a band from New York, and they were playing New York. So anyway, and my friend Mark Durnley, who I'd worked with, had on Michael Schenker and also on Herman Rarebell's thing that I did.
Herman's a German.
Yeah, that thing where. The only cool thing was I got to do a duet with Steve Marriott and Darlene Love, which was pretty fucking.
Didn't you write some Scorpion songs?
I did the lyrics for a couple songs, yeah, but that was just so I could go to sleep because Herman was having trouble in English. Yeah, but anyway, so I do this album, and it's just when we were doing it in the basement of this bread factory where they also filmed the Cosby Show. So Bill Cosby would be like walking around Little Johnny. That was a molester in a bathrobe right around us all the time. And, the album was, they were like, we want to be kind of a rock and roll, kind of Stonesy type thing. It was, okay, so we're doing the Stonesy type thing. We recorded the album. It sounds kind of Stonesy and had kind of a loose feel to it. And then all of a sudden in the mix, they're going, we want to sound like Kiss. I'm like, well, we should have recorded it like Kiss because they didn't like it. And so they went and they ended up having it mixed by my friend Michael Wagner, who I did several albums with, Poison being one of them. And, and Michael mixed it. And it was a piece of shit, but, I did everything. And, I refused to support the album. Elektra got mad at me and told me I would never work again. They didn't pay me, I was like, fuck you, so it was, the album was a piece of shit.
Huh. A couple more albums that I want to ask you about. One was, you did two albums for this band, Skew Siskin. When I was in Exeter.
I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote all their lyrics for them.
They had a girl singer too who was a little
Nina Schultz. Yeah, Nina Cialis.
Yeah, when I was in Exodus, we toured with Black Sabbath, and they were a Bion band. They did a Bion that tour.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. For Giant Records.
Were they from Germany?
Yeah, they're from Berlin.
Okay. Did you find them, or was that another label put you with them?
What happened was I did a bunch of albums with this German band called Victory, where I was like I wrote all their lyrics and I produced the first two albums. And the record company, they were signed to a record label, an offshoot of Polygram called Metronome. And the A&R guy is a really nice guy named Bernd Marx. He's like going, you should meet my friend Jim in Berlin. So I met him, and then one thing led to another, and they had me write a couple of songs with them, and then they really I think one of my biggest strengths is as an arranger and as a lyricist, and they had me write some things, and I write songs within like 7 days without you, mix 1 week, and things dumb shit like that. And I had a song called If the Walls Could Talk. It was in Northern Exposure or something like that that I did with them. So they had me come back, and I'd go to Berlin. And for me, it was just kind of fun going to Berlin. Got me out of the United States, which was always fun. And so I did a few albums with them.
Another album that I really like is Jesse Camp and H Street Kids.
Oh no, you're kidding!
I really like that album. Cher and Alex, did they write? They wrote most of that album. Is that true?
Cher, Alex, Bam, and I. Yeah, I put three of my closest, and Joe Almeida. Wait, did Joe do that album with us? Yeah, Joe also. Yeah. So I got all my my closest friends, at the time, and it was like, "You want to make some money? Let's go do this album."
Yeah, that's when Hollywood was throwing money. Hollywood Records was paying.
Hollywood money. Yeah. See, we did this song that this guy named Mathew McKenzie had written called "Here by My Side." We did these demos because he was this whiz kid from, he's a total fraud, but,
Mathew McKenzie or Jesse Camp?
Jesse Camp. Okay. Mathew was this real heavy-duty rocker from Boston who was like, played with Willie Alexander. He had a band called Ready Teddy. We're an amazing band. It should have been big. They unfortunately had some junk brothers. He played with Richard Lloyd and things like that. But he wrote this song that he and I had recorded in these demos for Elektra, and I don't know why to this day that Elektra didn't sign him. I think it was because the A&R person was this woman named Maxine Sartori, and she wanted him to fuck her, and he didn't.
Poor guy.
So anyway, but
all he had to do was fuck her. He could have made it big.
Yeah, well, he unfortunately, Mathew was all about integrity, but he was a junkie and died. Unfortunately, got hit by a car. But he wrote this song, and anyway, so we did a cover with Jesse because Jesse was incompetent, and, couldn't sing to save his life. So
I really like his vocals on that album. I'm sorry, I do.
Well, anyway, we ended up in reality. We finished this record Here by My Side. We played that, and every label wanted it, because it was just he came through okay on that one. And then we wrote all these songs for him, and he couldn't sing to save his ass. And so we got fired. Hollywood listened to it. It was like going, "This sucks." And so they replaced it with all these session guys, and they Pro Tooled it, and it sold like less than 8,000 copies, I think.
So you, Cher, Bam, and Alex, and the other guy wrote.
Joe from the Dogs to More, yeah.
Joe from Dogs to More, and
wrote everything.
Now, did you guys bring Rick Nielsen in and stuff, or
no? Hollywood did it. Hollywood brought all those guys.
So when you left, did Alex and Cher and them leave too?
Everybody was. We were all fired.
Huh. You got a good payday from that record, right?
Yeah, we did. I mean, they did. Everybody made, I think, like, because of the publishing. I think EMI signed us to some stupid publishing deal. But the manager tried to kind of ripped us off. But I think they all netted like, I think, $80,000 a piece. So that kept Alex alive for all those years, and Bam and Cher, and Joe.
When they fired you guys, they brought in Rob Cavallo, is that right? He was a
he was the A&R. He was the A&R guy.
Huh. Well, if you're gonna get fired, I guess. What do you think of Rob Cavallo? He's a good producer, right?
I have no thoughts of him at all.
Okay. Do tell.
I just.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I like that album. I
like Green Day. You're the first person who's ever told me they like that album.
You ever hear that album?
I mean,
that album's good, man.
Laugh. I to tell you the truth, I've never listened to it. But
you ever hear this band called Czar that Rob Cavallo produced?
No, the only thing I've ever heard that he's produced. I don't listen to music. It's a weird thing. I mean, I listen to my friends.
Music. I'm a record producer.
No. I mean, all I listen to, man, is like R&B and like old shit.
Yeah.
That like, I mean, I always wanted blood on the tracks, and I wanted soul and emotion. And it's really funny because I never wanted to produce any of these hair metal bands and things like that.
Was Poison was that the band that put you on the map?
Probably. I mean, I Nugent to a certain degree, but Poison, yeah. I mean, but the the funny thing was the two bands that I did, the best records I did were Flies on Fire and The Dogs D'Amour.
Yeah.
Those are the type of music that I would listen to in high.
I don't know Flies on Fire. I know Dogs D'Amour really. When American Heartbreak covered one of their tunes.
You should check out. There were 2 albums on Flies on Fire. The first one's better than the second one, but the second one's pretty damn good too.
What year was that out? That was Atco.
That was 1989 and 90. The reason I got to produce, the reason I got to produce The Dogs D'Amour was they heard I was. You must know Danny Nordahl, right?
Oh yeah, he was the Faster Pussy. He's in Faster Pussycat. Might be not be in the band anymore. I don't know, but he was in New York. He was in New York Loose as well.
Yeah. He fell off the. Actually, a few weeks ago, he was so fucked up. He fell off the steps of the bus and broke his arm.
Yeah, I didn't know he was fucked up when he did that, but I heard he did that.
Yeah. Nice, really nice guy. So, I just finished the Flies on Fire album. And remember Bordeners, the bar on Ivar, like on Hollywood Boulevard.
I'm from San Francisco, or I live in San Francisco, so I don't really know.
I forgot you were just down in LA periodically.
That's right.
It was this kind of rock and roll bar, and I come in, and Danny tells me The Dogs D'Amour are there because he knew that I absolutely adored The Dogs D'Amour, and I never met them. But so he introduced me to Bam and Steve from The Dogs D'Amour, and and I was like, oh, man, you're my favorite band, blah blah blah. And they go, well, what have you done? And I handed them the Flies on Fire album that I just had a cassette of. Because I was out with the lead singer celebrating that we just finished the mixes, and they called me that day. They went home, listened to it, and said, you've got to produce our album. And
now, was this before or after that Poison album?
Oh, way after.
Also, when they asked what you did,
nobody hired me off the Poison album.
So you didn't. That was so. What have you done? You didn't hand them the album that sold 5 million records. You handed them a band that.
Yeah, I think the Poison record's actually over 7 million or something like that.
Oh, good for them.
But no, the Poison album to me was just not what I do. I mean, it was what I do, but it's just not.
Did you get a good payday for that record?
Yeah, I mean, it bought me that house in Beverly Hills.
That was a nice house. It was definitely a nice house.
But the Flies on Fire album was just amazing record.
I'll have to look for those 2 records. I do not know them.
They're not available on any streaming service or anything, but you can probably find it on YouTube. The songs.
Okay, I'll look for them. I'll try to throw that one of those in the record.
It's so funny. The Georgia satellites were listening to them, and Black Crowes even came up and said, "We were listening to your album when we made our first album." Huh. It was like they were great.
Were they an Atlanta band?
No, they were from L.A.
Okay,
and. I saw them at the Coconut Teaser. Actually, Gilby Clarke was the one who turned me on to them. And I saw them on a Sunday night with 8 people there at the club, and I signed them. And what was really funny is they didn't believe me when I approached them and said, I want to sign you. And they went out and signed with somebody else and then realized who I was. We had to buy them out of that deal. Oh, wow. But, they didn't believe, they've been lied to. They've been together for 8 years and never gotten a deal. And I'm so proud of that band and, what just incredible people. And the bass player, unfortunately, just passed away but it was a 3-piece band and amazing record.
I'll have to look for those 2 records.
Yeah, they're worth getting.
All right, before we go, you wrote 1 book and you got another book coming out.
Actually, I've written 3 books.
Oh, tell me the books. I don't know. I have not.
I wrote a book called. Well, one book was came out, about 20 years ago called While I'm Dead, Feed the Dog. I write black comedy.
And is that a novel or a biography?
A novel. They're all novels. Well, I shouldn't say that. I wrote While I'm Dead, Feed the Dog, and it was on the small label First, Polygram Records wanted to release it, one of the divisions, but then the guy got fired. So he's fallen me off to this guy, the South African guy, and they made me record a record to go a soundtrack to the book. So I put the book out, and it only got into one bookstore before the book company went broke. But this German guy was saw it, and it's the name, the title, While I'm Dead, Feed the Dog, is a suicide note that my mother had left. And I thought was pretty funny. And this guy, German guy, sees the book and picks it up, reads it, loves it, says it's never laughed so hard. And so he calls me up and he says, "Are you the guy who wrote that?" I was in the white pages, back when there were telephone books and things like that, tracked me down. So I have an unusual name. He called me and, "Are you the guy who wrote this?" And I thought it was my friends in Slusher in Germany that were playing a joke. Tells me his name is Bernd Lefkowitz, and he was the owner of a publishing company that's kind of the equivalent of Doubleday in Germany called Aufbau Verlag. And he bought the German rights to it. I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, HarperCollins buys the book's rights. And then all of a sudden, every movie producer in town is like chasing me for the rights to this book. And for 4 years, I just wouldn't listen to any of them. And then finally, I made this deal with this guy who I should never have done, this guy named Andrew Lazar. So he makes a movie starring Selena Gomez, Catherine Shue, Mary Louise Parker, Gary Busey, and anybody who was sitting around the CAA dressing, offices that day. There was a sign up, "Want to make $25,000, no work? We'll make this movie." And they gang raped my book into a movie.
What was the movie called?
It was called Behaving Badly.
A listener might... Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I was like, I saw the script. It had nothing to do with my book. You gave me over $100,000 to do this piece of shit, and you make me a session producer. I was like, I will not. I hated it. And so I started writing a blog about how bad it was. But a very funny blog. If you ever go to celebritytrainwreck.net, you'll see it. And making fun of the making of the movie. And the movie, every time I'd write this blog entry, I'd get a thing from their lawyers, like calling my lawyers, like threatening me. So one thing led to another, and the movie was a total flop. It didn't even get released. It was a success in Italy, but it didn't get released theatrically in America. But it's just been re-released in England.
A friend of my show, I put on the on my Facebook group. I'm talking to Ric Browde. Michael Street said a book you wrote got adapted into a movie, got a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
And probably deserve. I still haven't seen it, but everybody I know, I saw it deserves it. It had nothing to do with my book.
There you go. But you got $100,000.
I got over $100,000, yeah. And then I wrote a book. Then with Alex, because of Alex Kane, I wrote another book. Because Alex used to be a phone psychic. I don't know if he'd ever told you. And you remember Miss Cleo? So
wow,
Alex was doing that, and I couldn't believe he was doing it. And so I said, I've got to do this. I want to do this. I can't believe people do this.
Yeah, that sounds like something Alex would do.
And so he was my boss, and so he hired me.
He got promoted to management. Good for him.
Oh, he was managed. He ran what was called a bookstore. So you dial an 800 number, log in, and then all the calls would come to you.
Right.
And my very first call summed up the whole experience. And I know nothing about astrology. Let me tell you to begin with. And the first call is this woman calls me up and goes, "Why is me and my daughters always be getting pregnant?" And I go, "Because you don't use protection." She goes, "He got me a dog, stupid." And I told her not to fuck the dog, and she hung up on me. But
you screwed up. You're supposed to keep him on the line for 10 minutes.
Yeah, you would get fired 10 minutes, right. If you didn't get him on the phone for 10 minutes, they could fire you. But so I had to keep changing my phone number so that Alex would rehire. I mean, Alex knew I was doing it. So I wrote this book that's hysterically funny about some of the calls I got. And you just could not believe how stupid and, people would and I would admit that I was a fraud to everybody and I helped bring down the psychic network because of some of the shit that I did. But,
what was that book called?
Tales from the Psycho Network. You can buy it on Amazon.
I got to buy these books. That sounds like a fucking great book.
But what was so great was people would call me up and like they go, I want to talk to a good psychic. Well, they all quit. Why would they quit? They felt there was no future in the job, and it was like two things like that.
And poor Alex didn't want to fire his friend.
But they go, prove to me you're psychic. Well, 90% of the calls were women, so I figured it out really quickly. I said, I sense you're worried about your weight. Worked every time.
Good one.
And if they had a really, and I feel horrible saying this because it does not relate to how I feel people, but if they had a very black accent, I would say I sense someone around you's had some trouble with the law, and it would work, because blacks get oppressed by stereotypes, get oppressed by police all the time.
Their stereotypes are there for a reason, friends.
But it was just terrible. And
that's great.
So then I'd admit to people as far, and they call me up and go, "What's the winning lottery number?" Right, and I go, "Do you consider yourself a smart person?"
There
they go,
you go.
Why, yeah. And I go, "Okay, so you're paying $3.99 a minute," and then it went up to $4.99 a minute. But, now, let's say I was getting the whole money, but I'm not. I'm only getting 20, I think I was getting 20 cents a minute. First it was 25 and then 20 cents a minute. So do you think I'm so fucking psychic that I'm talking to fucking losing fucking assholes like you rather than being in fucking Las Vegas playing fucking roulette?
I produced the fucking Poison album, you mother.
But I like worked myself into this frenzy, and 90% of them, 95% of them would hang up, like feeling ashamed and realizing how stupid they were. But the other 5% were the interesting ones, because they would go,
"Stay and argue."
They go, "You know the winning numbers. You're just keeping them for yourself." And I go, "Okay, you caught me. All right." The winning, we at the Psychic Friends Network have this deal with your state's lottery that we do know the winning numbers. And now I'm under obligation because you caught me to tell you. So the winning numbers are 2, 17, 33, 36, 39, and 97. And they go, "Wait, there are only like 50 numbers or 60 numbers in the lottery. How could 97 be a winning number?" And I go, "You never won the lottery, did you?" And they go, "No." I said, "Well, it's because we keep that number for ourselves. You have to go in and demand the right to play 97.
Wouldn't it be funny if the numbers you picked actually did win the lottery or something?
It would have been, but I always gave 97 as it was like, what, but like the people coming into lottery, it's like, "I want to play 97. Sir, we don't have 97. "Yes, my psychic said you do." But it was pretty funny, and there'd be people who called me up like committing crimes and telling me about them. It was funny,
So that's two books. What's the third book?
The third book's the one I sent you the other day, which is called Son of God, the sequel, and it's almost a sequel. It is a sequel to the first book, and it's really dark humor. I write really black humor, and it's about this kid who's convinced that his parents never had sex, that he's the second coming, basically. But he tries to get in the pants of the Swedish foreign exchange student and ends up trying to open up for ABBA. And there are all these other things that go along. He has this uncle who dies, is going to leave $40 million to his parents who had just gotten divorced. And but their provisions, they have to get married and have an act of sex that's filmed every night, or the money goes to open up half to the kids and half to open a chain of drive-through whorehouses. Huh. And it's just this very black comedy, and I've gotten a lot of interest from the movie rights. So we'll see what happens.
Wow, quite the life, Ric Browde, I tell you.
Yeah, so that's what keeps me busy, and when I'm not flying dogs.
How old are you?
I just turned 70 last week.
Oh, still a kid.
Yeah.
Right on your tail, friend.
Oh God, it's like, what happened? I was young.
And life is just beginning.
Who knows? I've traveled. Let's see. By the end of the week, I'll have traveled 25,000 miles. And,
a lot of these record producers write books about the producing.
I would never do that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds like
I don't think anybody care about,
I don't know.
My books have a lot of rock and roll in them, but they're apocryphal stories, and the names have been changed to protect the guilty. But no, rock and roll is boring to a certain extent. I mean, how much time have you spent in your life sitting in a van or sitting at a club waiting for sound check? I mean, you end up, the great thing for rock and roll was it allowed me to travel and see the world. I've gone to, 80 countries in my time, and
you met your wife.
I met my wife backstage at Max's Kansas City. Yeah.
There you go.
The whole thing is, you got to seize every moment. And that's the one thing that I was able to do in rock and roll was I never allowed, I wrote music for porn movies. I did this. I got to do a lot of different things.
You were around in the good old days of music.
Yeah, it was fun. But, the one thing that I never did was I never confined myself to rock and roll, because you only get one life. And if you're just going to play, 3 chords for the rest of your life, you're going to have a pretty mundane life to a certain degree. So I just thought there was more to it, and, things that I could get involved in. And the one thing I, feel very strongly is, that I have to make the world better. And that's why I do the charity work that I do.
Well, that's good.
That's like 80 hours a week, every week for the last 10, 20 years, pretty much. So
you're earning your wings.
Yeah, so to speak. And I don't even believe in that shit. So, anyway, but I want to make the world better. And so that's far more important than making another fucking record. But the Midnight Devils record is an amazing record, and everybody should buy it.
Yeah,
because all the money, my money's going to Animal Rescue.
There you go. I've sung the Midnight Devils praises over and over again, and I'll probably play their new song on this show.
You know what? I'm going to send you something that's not on the album. It's going to come out as a single. Going to get laid. We did a dance mix to it. I'll send you that.
Please send me that. Please send it to me as soon as you can, because I'm going to be posting this like within the hour.
Do me a favor and shoot me your email, and I'll send it to you.
All right, I will do that as soon as I get here. I'm doing it right now.
Okay, and I'll drop it to you, because I think you'll. It's something that we did. We just had a fuckload of fun doing.
I just messaged it to you on Facebook.
Cool.
All right,
you're the only person I've ever communicated with on Facebook, so that's an honor that you always have.
Well, I'm glad I found you, because this was a really fun talk, Ric Browde. I had a good time.
It's great. It's great to hear your voice again, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, I'm surprised you remembered who I was when Sam came. Oh, Ric Browde said hi. I was, I can't believe he remembered.
I said two of the nicest people I ever met were you and Billy Rowe. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't like Billy Rowe.
Yeah, no.
And I was like, yeah, you got to say hi to him.
Oh, I forgot to mention you produced the first Jetboy record too. I mentioned. There you go.
No, I only did one song on the album.
Oh, okay.
That's how I met Billy. I did the one after they got dropped by Elektra. MCA wanted to do one more song, and I did the song, which was a good song. And they were so much fun to play with. I mean, Sammy, Billy.
Yeah. Oh, Sammy was still in the band. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well,
and got to meet Billy.
Ric Browde, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Michael.
And everybody,
take care.
Tell if you listen to this, tell Ric Browde you heard him on the Rock and Roll Geek Show, so he didn't waste 1 hour and 36 minutes of his life on this crappy podcast.
All right.
Rick, please do me a favor, also send me all the links, and I'll put them in the show notes.
Okay.
All right.
I will do that.
Thank you so much, Rick. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again
Take
for
care.
doing this. All right, Rick. Bye.
Bye.
There you go. The great Ric Browde. All right. I'm going to give it a little while and let Ric Browde send me the dance mix of Gonna Get Laid. Okay, friends? I'll talk to you soon. rockandrollgeek@gmail.com. rockandrollgeek.com is where you can find this show. Find me on the Facebook, R&R Geek. Find me on the Twitter, R&R Geek. Find me on the Instagram, Rock and Roll Geek. Don't ask. Please keep the donations coming, because it's a value for value. If you got any value out of this, please contribute what you can, friends, because I am sweating my ass off in 110-degree weather up in the mountains right now. I'll talk to you soon. Here is hopefully here is Midnight Devils. If not, I'll come back and say a few other things. All right, talk to you later, friends. All right, Ric Browde came through, sent me the dance mix of the new Midnight Devils single, Unheard Anywhere. It's not going to be on the album. Before I play that, thank you again, Ric Browde, for coming on the podcast. Here's some links. CelebrityTrainwreck.com. That's his blog about the movie. RicBrowde.com. And here's his charity, wingsofrescue.org. I will post links on the show notes at rockandrollgeek.com. Thank you again, Ric Browde, for doing this. Here is the dance mix of Midnight Devils, Get Laid.
hoping that'll please us, please us. Rub the plastic Jesus, Jesus, hoping that'll please us, us. Just watch out so I don't get pricked. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. Finally get I'm an optimist. Gonna get laid. Gonna get laid tonight. Gonna get laid tonight.
It's a rock and roll geek train wreck.